understand that. Why punish the Christians for Islamic terror?
Because I don't think it's Islamic terror that's taking place in the first place. I think we have to disabuse ourselves of that notion that this is a battle between Muslim and Jew, or that, constantly you heard after the October event was that Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Even to this day, we hear it's Hamas,
Yes.
Hamas, Hamas. What is Hamas? Hamas are people who have had their homes taken from them, who, if they live in Gaza, have not been basically been in an open air prison for certainly the last 20 years going on. Even when the Israelis withdrew from Gaza, they didn't leave open borders. There was no freedom for people in Gaza to develop their economy. If I know people who wanted to try to go to school in America and couldn't get out of Gaza, had a Fulbright scholarship and weren't able to leave.
I mean, couldn't get out.
Israel didn't give them permission. So what kind of freedom is that if you live in Gaza?
They couldn't even fly out?
No. And their airport had been bombed in 2000 and early on. 2000, there was an airport built soon after the Oslo Accords. But Israel has intervened many times in Gaza and little by little destroyed.
So you were a nun in a majority Muslim town, a Christian nun,
Yep.
in your habit, I assume.
Mm-hmm. And which also was to an advantage because pious Muslims are not jihadists, the ones that I know. I'm not saying other parts of the world that may be the case, but in Palestine, it's simply not the case, or Syria or Lebanon or Iraq. The Muslims there, for the most part, are, they've all grown up together, the Christians and the Muslims, and there's a certain amount of commonality and respect. And so being dressed like this was just like many of the women there, right? So they kind of respected that. There's the same sort of conservative culture. There's the same sort of idea that we're both have some same basic values of compassion for our neighbor, of taking care of our families, and trying to live. They have their form of fasting and almsgiving, and it's actually very important to them. And I think the best parts of Islam come from its development from Christian ideas that Muhammad came to know. I'm sure of that. You can sense it.
This is a very different story from the one that we're told in the American media, that Christians are imperiled by Muslims in the Middle East.
They are not imperiled by Muslims in Palestine. That is an absolute fact. And that's just simply not the case. And again, going back to my school, in our school, we had icons, which are part of the Orthodox tradition, pictures of saints and crosses in every classroom. No problem with that. I could show you a photograph, I can't now, but of the graduates of the latest high school graduation. And, they're embracing the nuns there. They're dressed actually in a more secular way. And it all
So a lot of your students were Muslim?
98%. The only Christian
of your students were Muslims?
Yeah. And about half the teachers during the time I was there, some Muslim, some Christian.
In a Christian school?
Yes. And actually that's all throughout Palestine. The Orthodox is relatively small. We do have schools in many of the Palestinian towns, but also Catholic schools, Lutheran schools. And most of the population, most of the students are Muslims.
Huh.
And the beautiful thing about where the great danger is, if the Christians continue to diminish, a key part of Palestinian society and within Israel as well, you go to Nazareth, you'll see many Catholic-run hospitals, schools. And so it's a fabric, it's a part of the whole character.
But I'm just still confused by the idea that the Christian population is declining under Israeli rule. Yeah. You would think just the opposite.
What gives them what I observed from my time in Israel and going back every year is that they do not want any Palestinians there. So the majority of Christians in Israel and Palestine are Palestinian. So they have to leave too. James Carville, right? He was under Clinton and he came up with a phrase for the campaign, "It's the economy, stupid." The problem with Israel and Palestine is not Muslim versus Jew. It's the occupation, stupid. That's really what it comes down to. And unless we get something where a sovereign Palestinian state where they're granted their freedom is created, and maybe that'll be two states with a boundary, or maybe it'll be some sort of confederation. That's up to the politicians to decide. But unless there's freedom and an ability for the Palestinians to develop and be free to have their country, Christians will continue to leave. What Israel likes to do is destroy. Not only do they control the place, but they almost take glee. And we're not talking about Hamas time. We're not talking about, 2023. We're talking about 2002. They would go through the town of Bethlehem and purposely with their tanks, the smaller ones, like knock over the light poles or the things that are garnished with Christmas trees, decorations and things, and knock them over in the middle of town, or pull their bulldozer and smash a car.
There were people shot inside the Church of the Nativity.
Yeah, the bell ringer there was shot dead. Yeah, and I know monks were there. Was he a Christian? Of course, yeah.
So that was the moment.
And Christians were shot outside the church. I don't know if it was exactly during those 40 days, but a young 16-year-old boy, an altar boy of the church, there were curfews going on, and they had tanks all around the city circling them. And he was out with his 70-year-old cousin, I think it was, and they were just kicking a soccer ball. He was shot dead by a sniper, 16-year-old Johnny Talgia.
You remember his name?
Of course. And also there was another, Christine Saada. Her father was the principal of the Orthodox school in Bet Sahur, Shepherd's Field. They were driving, and the Israeli soldiers that is Area A, right? If you want to talk about the politics of it, technically that means it was under full Palestinian control. They should have their police and everything. No, Israeli jeeps were there, and they mistakenly thought that was a car of some militant. So they shot up the car. His wife was injured. He was injured as well. And his 12-year-old daughter, Christine, was killed.
Why? What did they do wrong?
The Israelis thought that was somebody that was going to do something bad.
Was anyone ever punished for it?
Of course not. Well, there had been a situation where some settlers, probably the followers of Ben Gvir, they had taken a little truck and they had explosives, and they had gone in front of a high school on the top of the Mount of Olives. Fortunately, it was stopped before they blew it up. So every day, I remember for at least 6 months, because they'd also done something similar near us, near the Mali Adumim settlement, I would actually go, we had a fairly large property, and there's like gates on either side where the girls would come in. Every morning, I'd be up at 6 a.m. and go make sure that I didn't see like a little bomb someplace, because that was what was going on. And totally
with the settlers, you worried the settlers would bomb the school?
They attempted to.
Why?
There were a couple occasions. Palestinians.
But kids.
Doesn't matter.
Do you think Christians in other Arab countries are treated better than Christians in Israel and Palestine? Well,
I can only go from my times of being there. In Lebanon too, at the time I was there were churches, and they were part of the society. Yeah. So there was nothing wrong with being a Christian. And in Syria, when I would now who knows what's going to happen? But certainly the time when I was there.
Well, Israel controls those countries now.
So. Well, they're trying to make inroads. Yeah. Well, what did they do first? They bombed after Assad went down. They get rid of all the military. So what is the point of Abu Jalani being there now, the ISIS head? Who is he serving? Is he serving the Syrian people or the Israeli people?
What's the answer?
Right now, it looks like he's serving Israel. Gaza, the St. Porphyrius Church from the 3rd century, was bombed. We also have in the Orthodox.
How did a Christian church get bombed?
Because it's part of Palestinians, and all there. I've been there before, and basically that it's the Holy Family Church and the Baptist Church. They're all pretty much in the same area, so you can't make a mistake. And Christians through.
Well, you don't think that was an accident?
No, nothing's an accident. I mean, occasionally a shell might go off, but no. And certainly the last time with the one where they pointed at the cross. You don't miss that. Well, at the Holy Family Church, the cross didn't topple, but literally inches from it. And I have, in Nablus at Jacob's Well, there's a large church now, and there's crosses on the front face in circles. And the monk always points out to us when I go there, there's a tank shell that was aimed at that cross. You can still see it from an earlier confrontation in Nablus. So don't tell me these soldiers make mistakes.